At some point this week, you're going to eat something. And unless you're a pretty unusual person, you didn't grow it, raise it, hunt it, fish it, or forage it. You drove to a building, walked down a fluorescent lit aisle, put something in a cart, swiped a card, and brought it home. The whole process took maybe 30 minutes, including the drive. Now, I want to be clear up front. I'm not here to tell you that's morally wrong or that you need to become a homesteader to be a healthy human being. That's not what this channel is about. What I want to do is show you what your nervous system and your psychology lost when that transaction replaced something that used to take days or weeks or an entire season. Because the research on what we've lost is genuinely striking. And the application, the offset, is more accessible than you might think. Let's get into it. Modern grocery stores, the kind we take completely for granted, have existed for roughly 100 years. Supermarkets, with their full-scale supply chains and ultra-processed products, really only became the dominant food acquisition model in the mid-20th century. Call it 70 to 80 years. Before that, most humans grew, raised, caught, or gathered the majority of what they ate. And before settled agriculture, which itself is only about 10,000 years old, all of our food came from hunting, fishing, and foraging. That's the baseline our biology was built on. Homo sapiens have existed in our current anatomical form for somewhere between 200,000 and 300,000 years. Modern food retail has existed for less than 1/10 of 1% of that window. Our food acquisition system is 70 years old. Our biology is 300,000 years old. That gap, that's the mismatch we're talking about today. And it goes much deeper than the nutrients in the food itself. It's about the entire behavioral, psychological, and neurological system that was built around the process of acquiring food in the first place. To understand the mismatch, we have to take seriously what food acquisition actually looked like across human evolutionary history. Not romanticized, not idealized, just accurate. Hunting large game is the most cognitively and physically demanding behavior a human being can engage in. It requires sustained aerobic effort, sometimes across multiple days. It requires tracking, pattern recognition, spatial memory, environmental reading, wind awareness, and the ability to suppress the autonomic stress response long enough to execute a precise, controlled kill, often at close range. Fishing, particularly the kind of small stream active fishing that characterized much of early human subsistence, requires stillness, patience, observation, and fine motor skill. It demands presence. You cannot fish well while thinking about something else. Foraging and gathering require an encyclopedic working knowledge of the local environment. Which plants are edible, which are toxic, which are seasonal, where they grow, and how to process them. Ethnobotanical research consistently finds that hunter-gatherer populations carry thousands of distinct pieces of ecological knowledge, the kind of distributed, embodied expertise that takes years to develop. Growing food, or agriculture, is itself a radical cognitive and physical project. Soil preparation, planting timing, pest management, irrigation, harvest, and preservation across an entire annual cycle. Every one of these systems demanded full spectrum cognitive engagement: attention, memory, planning, physical effort, environmental awareness, delayed gratification, and, critically, social coordination. Food was almost never acquired alone. Here's where it gets interesting from a neuroscience perspective, because the brain doesn't just passively register the outcome of food acquisition. It has a dedicated motivational architecture built around the pursuit itself. The dopaminergic reward system, centered on the nucleus accumbens and the ventral tegmental area, is not primarily activated by consumption. It's activated by anticipation, by the pursuit, by the uncertain, probabilistic chase toward a reward. This is Kent Burrage's distinction between wanting and liking, two neurochemically distinct systems. Liking is mediated largely by opioid signaling and produces hedonic pleasure at the moment of consumption. Wanting is mediated by dopamine and drives motivated behavior toward the reward. And crucially, wanting is far more powerful, more sustained, and more neurologically consuming than liking. What this means in plain language, your brain was built to be most activated, most alive, neurologically speaking, during the pursuit of food, not during eating, during the hunt. When you walk into a grocery store, the wanting system barely activates. The reward is certain, immediately available, and requires almost no effort. There's no uncertainty, no skill, no pursuit. You've short-circuited the system. The opioid liking response at consumption is still there, which is why ultra-processed food, engineered to maximize palatability, is so compelling. But you've removed the entire dopaminergic pursuit architecture that the wanting system evolved to run on. And a wanting system with nothing to want is neurologically a problem. Beyond the reward circuitry, the shift away from active food acquisition has psychological costs that I think are significantly underappreciated. Hunting, fishing, foraging, and gardening are among the very few human activities that reliably produce what psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi called flow, the state of full absorption in a challenging skill match task. The task is difficult enough to demand complete attention, but tractable enough to produce progress. That combination is neurologically rare in modern life and psychologically essential. Research on attention restoration theory, developed by Rachel and Stephen Kaplan, finds that natural environments with active engagement produce the deepest cognitive recovery from directed attention fatigue. Not passive exposure to nature, active engagement in it. Hunting and fishing data, in particular, show some of the highest scores on attention restoration measures of any studied activity. There is something psychologically profound about being able to feed yourself, not as a hobby, as a genuine capacity. Research on self-efficacy, Bandura's foundational work, consistently shows that competence in high-stakes, skill-dependent domains produces the most robust and durable sense of personal agency. Most modern humans cannot feed themselves in any meaningful sense. They are entirely dependent on an industrial supply chain that they didn't build, don't understand, and can't repair. That's not a moral failure, it's the structure of modern civilization. But it does represent a near total loss of the kind of food-related competence that was universal across human history, and the psychological consequences of that dependence are real. Active food acquisition is one of the last domains where humans engage in full-body, sustained, purposeful physical effort in natural environment. The cardiovascular load of a backcountry hunt, the postural demands of stream fishing, the repetitive physical work of a garden, these aren't incidental to the activity. They are the activity. We've already covered on this channel what happens to brain structure and mental health when physical effort disappears from daily life. Food acquisition was historically one of the primary vehicles for that effort. When food acquisition becomes transactional, you lose not just the food production capacity, but the entire physical engagement system that came with it. There's one dimension of this mismatch that I think gets almost no attention, and it might be among the most important. Food acquisition across virtually all of human evolutionary history was a profoundly social activity. Hunting parties, fishing communities, foraging groups organized around shared ecological knowledge, agricultural villages coordinating planting, harvest, and storage. The entire social fabric of early human communities was organized in large part around the shared project of feeding the group. What this means is that the neuroscience of food acquisition isn't just about dopamine and the pursuit system. It's also about oxytocin, social bonding, shared risk, shared reward, shared competence, and the deep psychological satisfaction of contributing to the survival of the people you care about. The modern equivalent, everyone independently buying their own individually packaged food items from a corporation, is, from a social neuroscience perspective, almost the complete inversion of that system. The transaction is private, individual, passive, and socially inert. When a hunting or fishing or gardening activity is done with other people, with family, friends, with a community, you're not just acquiring food, you're running the social bonding architecture that co-evolved with the food acquisition system. Those two things were never separate. The mismatch here isn't primarily about nutrients. though that's real and worth a separate episode. The mismatch is about the entire behavioral system surrounding food acquisition. Your nervous system evolved inside a world where food required days or weeks of sustained physical effort, sophisticated environmental knowledge and pattern recognition, full spectrum cognitive engagement, attention, memory, planning, and spatial reasoning, uncertain probabilistic outcomes that fully activated the dopaminergic pursuit system, social coordination and shared risk, a direct embodied relationship with the landscape, the seasons, and the organisms you depend on. Modern food acquisition requires approximately none of that. And the psychological and neurologic systems that evolved to run on that full suite of inputs are left, in many cases, running on empty. Low-grade anhedonia, attention fragmentation, a diffuse sense of incompetence or purposelessness, dopamine systems chronically understimulated by real-world pursuit and chronically overstimulated by engineered food palatability, social disconnection. These aren't unrelated modern problems. They may share a common root in the near total elimination of one of the most psychologically rich activities in human evolutionary history. Okay, here's the part that matters, and I want to be direct. You don't have to become a hunter to benefit from this framework. The offset is about reintroducing the neurological and psychological inputs that food acquisition used to provide at whatever scale is realistic for your life. The core neurologic input you're missing is uncertain, effortful pursuit. Fishing is probably the most accessible entry point. Even casual angling activates the dopaminergic pursuit system in ways that grocery shopping fundamentally cannot. With higher cognitive and physical demands, hunting is the deeper version of this. With higher cognitive and physical demands, and for most people, proportionally higher psychological return. Even growing food in a garden introduces the element of uncertain outcomes and effortful investment that the brain's reward system was built to run on. So make a plan to go fishing or grow something. Entry-level stuff. The goal isn't the food. The goal is reactivating the wanting system with something real. Start learning what's edible in your specific geographic area. Wild plants, fungi, game animals, fish species, their seasonality, their habitat. You don't have to act on all of it immediately. The knowledge itself changes your relationship to the environment. It transforms a walk in the woods from passive recreation into an active environmental reading. That cognitive shift is meaningful and it's essentially free. Examples of this might be to learn when your local mushrooms bloom and go pick a few. Be sure to cross-reference guides on edibility though, because some mushrooms can be toxic. Another example might be to eat some dandelions. My family and I love to make dandelion tea or dehydrate the dandelion root and add it to recipes. It's super high in vitamin C and likely right outside in your front yard. Take someone with you. Teach someone what you know. Learn from someone who knows more than you. The social bonding that happens around a shared fishing trip, a hunting camp, a morning of foraging, or a garden project activates relationship architecture that evolved alongside the food acquisition system itself. It's not incidental, it's structural. Even if you're buying most of your food from a store, start tracking what's in season locally. Visit a farmer's market not just to buy food, but to ask where it came from and how it was produced. Harvest something, even if it's a handful of blackberries from a roadside cane. Reconnect your calendar to the ecological calendar. That reorientation costs nothing and begins to close one of the most pervasive gaps in the mismatch. The full version of this offset is a hunting season, a fishing rod, a garden bed, and a community to share it with. But even a partial version, any version, is neurologically and psychologically meaningful. Your brain recognizes the inputs. It was built for them. That's it for today. We didn't get into the dietary science of what you actually eat. That's a whole separate conversation and one we'll come back to. Today was about the process, the acquisition, the pursuit. Because I think once you understand that the human brain didn't just evolve to eat certain foods, it evolved to go get them with all of the effort and skill and social engagement that entailed, the modern food environment looks very different, and so do the options available to you. If this is useful, subscribe. We do this across behavioral science, neuroscience, and evolutionary psychology, always with an eye toward the offset or the application, or what you can actually do. I'll see you in the next one.